Okay, so sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. And a sun-faced Buddha is a Buddha that lives eternally. It has a long, long lifespan. And moon-faced Buddha is a Buddha that lives very short amount of time, one day. And so this koan is about that. And my question for you is one Buddha more Buddha than the other? Is one Buddha a better Buddha than the other? So the koan is about Master Ma, and Master Ma was a Zen master in the Tang Dynasty, and he was, kind of what you think of as a really kind of real Zen master. He was a guy, and his appearance was, big, and he walked around, big like a bull, it said, and people who would look at him, he would glare at like a tiger. And when he stretched out his tongue, it reached all the way up over his nose. So he was very impressive, I imagine, and kind of scary. And on the soles of his feet were imprinted 2 circular marks. So those were the signs of the Buddha. So he was a real Zen master. But anyway, he was sick, and the koan goes like this. Master Ma was unwell. And so the superintendent of the temple came to check in on him, and he asked him, "How has your venerable's health been in recent days?" And Master Ma, in his sickbed, said, "Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha." So today is a special day in the tradition that I grew up in. It's Palm Sunday. It's also the day that's linked historically to Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem, where palms were laid down on the ground so that he could walk, carried by a donkey, I believe, through the streets, and everyone was jubilant. They didn't know that at the end of the week he would be having his Last Supper and, dying. And it's also very linked to the Jewish tradition. And it falls basically on the same day, though Pesach started yesterday. There are a lot of links between these traditions that happen. And they were very linked together until some authorities in the 4th century came together and said that they were separate. So as a preacher's kid growing up, the Last Supper, which is this coming Thursday, was really kind of important because it was the last time that Jesus actually broke bread or matzah with the disciples. And I was wondering about that word mondi. I never, actually in all these years, I never knew what it was. So I looked it up, and it has something to do with washing feet. And this sense of like washing the feet, the dusty feet, really struck me. And part of the whole ceremony of the supper, as I understand it, is this piece about sharing the lamb that is within the matzah somehow. And I don't quite understand that, but somehow it has to do with Jesus offering himself up as a sacrificial lamb. And so I always identified Easter, which is coming up next Sunday, as this whole time of like Easter eggs and chocolate and bunnies, and you get a nice outfit for Easter. That's what Easter was for me. So when I went up yesterday with my friend, my oldest friend, Missy, to visit a friend of hers who's a shepherdess, who had just been through lambing season, and I've never seen lambing season. So I was expecting, happy little lambs to roam around, and, I could get to play with them. But here in the western Massachusetts, we got snow. We got snow yesterday, like a fair amount of snow, about 3 inches. And so it was kind of cold and wet and drizzly, and we went up there. And yeah, there were about 23 little lambs that were running around that were born within the last 2 weeks. And so I went out and I was running to catch them, and grab them and hold them before they started squealing for their mother. But there was a big concern because there was one lamb, or I guess it was a mother sheep who was still pregnant. And there was a lot of concern because last year she had a really hard time giving birth. She could not get the babies out. And so the shepherdess had to help in what seemed like a really brutal way, but was the only way that they could do to get the lambs outside of the mother. And she's telling me about this, and suddenly, happy little lambs became this gruesome kind of bloody ordeal of waiting to see if they would come out alive and if the mother would accept them, because last year the mother did not accept the little lambs. And I think one of them died. There were 2, and one of them had to be nursed on a bottle. So it was a real concern. And also for the mother, that the mother, if she wasn't able to produce lambs, would be sent to slaughter. So it was a little more gruesome than I had expected. And so we were sitting in the kitchen waiting. Every half an hour, the shepherdess would run out or look through the binoculars to see if the mother had given birth, because you couldn't get too close because that would scare her, and she would hold on even tighter. And so when in the evening, close to 4:30 or so, the first baby came out, there was a lot of jubilation. And then there was the second one that came out. And the shepherdess said, well, you can come out now and, don't get too close, but you can look. And so I went out and I saw this little shivering lamb laying limp, wet from the fluids of the mother and the birth, on the straw in the cold, shivering, shaking. And the shepherdess was a little concerned until the mother came over and started licking the baby. And bit by bit, this kind of almost lifeless looking blob that was laying down there started to come to life and began to stand up, actually. I mean, this is like amazing that they can stand up, and wobbled over to find her mother's teats and begin to nurture herself. So as we were going back from the barn, I noticed that there was this smell in the barn. And I didn't recognize it, and the shepherdess said, oh, that's the one that didn't make it yesterday. And I was like, what? And she said, yeah, there was one that was born, but only lasted a little bit. Moon-faced Buddha. So we are human beings that are not these pretty pictures of bunnies and colored eggs and pretty outfits. We come from this same origin. And there's a lot of concern. It's not pretty. So earlier this week, a different story was when I checked an email, and I have one email account that somehow I can't seem to match up anymore with my my email program on my Apple computer, and so I always have to go and check it specifically. And I went to check it. It's an old email, and I came across a notice, and it was a picture and a memorial. And I looked at it, and I was kind of in disbelief. And I saw the picture and read the words, Peter Gregory, Memorial. So I searched around to find out what had happened. Was he actually gone? And I found an email from his wife, Margie, further on down the stream, and saying that just earlier that month, I think it was, I forget the exact date, but it was a little earlier that month, he had gone to bed, was reading a book, and had a massive heart attack. So I had not seen Peter and Margie for a long time, since they moved to Vermont about 3.5 years away, 3.5 hours ago. But probably about maybe 7 or 8 years it's been since I had actually seen them. But when I first moved to the Valley back in 1999, the year 2000, my Zen teacher, Enkyo, said, "You got to look up my friend Peter. He's in the Buddhist department at Smith College." And so I did. And I was a fresh-shaven, new little priest, and I walked up to Peter Gregory, and he just allowed me to sit in on his seminars, his Dogen seminars. One thing led to another. We began sitting at the Northampton dojo, and then when I opened my office on Main Street and a room to the side of the office became available, he and Margie said that they would give half of the rent for that space. And they did that for many, many years. And so that's the reason why Zen Center on Main Street became a place. It became the only dedicated Zendo in Northampton for 10 years. Or more. I think it was actually more than that, 11 years. And he and I were on the team to do many flavors of the Dharma, twice, if you're familiar with that. Women in practicing Buddhism, of which Rumon Sensei was a part of, and wrote a book with that. I became the Buddhist chaplain at Smith, was included in the community. Whenever there were guest teachers that would come, I would be invited, not just to sit in on their talks, but also to have dinner. And so he opened doors. He opened many doors. And when my first marriage dissolved, I went over to their house, and they welcomed me in and said, "Come over, have breakfast anytime." And when Bernie Glassman and Eve Marco, his wife, came over to Montague to look at the barn that became the Maizumi Institute for a short period of time, I was there because Peter told me about it and invited me to come. And so the short-lived House of All People and the Maizumi Institute were important manifestations of the lineage. Peter was also a scholar, a translator, and had a lot of things to offer the community. And when I spoke with Margie on the phone, she said that he was going to bed like usual, and he always read a book. And she found it interesting that when she heard a little cough from the other room and went in to check on him and saw that he was unconscious, that he had placed that book next to him, closed it, taken his glasses off and placed them right next to him. Not what he normally did, which is to put the book on the nightstand. And somehow that fact just stuck with me. So when I heard the words of our good friend Bobby Rhodes this morning say these words, it struck me. Each of us is the book. I thought, what a perfect way to end. So that little lamb is their life less important? That long life, almost 80 years old, is that of greater value? What about our own lives, our own book? Do we write that book with fear or worry about what could happen? Do we stay so concerned in what we're writing and putting in it that we miss the moment where we step into the mud and feel that cold snow or that warm body of that little sheep cuddling? Or really be intimate with the blood and guts that are happening all too many times over this world? What is the book that we're writing? Do we live until that very last moment when we're finished? No, we take our glasses off. It was unusual to me that same week, last week, in speaking with both Margie, Peter's wife, and also a client of mine who had lost her father just the same month. Actually, it would have been March. My client said it was strange that my father said these beautiful words that he never said before to me, how much he valued me and loved me. And that there was something unusual about when he did that. And that Margie would say, yes, it was strange that he said goodnight to me in the sweetest voice of love. So I ask, how do we leave this world? How do we be the one Buddha of this day? Not worried about the longevity, but just this moment. Maizumi Roshi, I'll end with this, says, have good trust in yourself, not in the one you think you should be, but the one you are. So I think that about says it for everything that I wanted to share today. I'm just really appreciating seeing all of you in this moment and the rawness, the beauty that we all share, and the hardness that's the reality of these moments that come and go. So I'm just going to take a pause and just see if anyone wants to share some of what they're holding today, and really anything. The other thing, I'll say one other thing, is that there was a moment when they weren't sure if the lamb that was going to be born was actually going to need to be bottle fed, and the shepherdess was just too through. She could not do it again. And I was sitting there thinking, What am I going to do? How can I not? How can I? So I was spared this time. But I think it could have been different. Yeah. So anyway, I will stop right now. So if you'd like to share your words, please just step in.
I just want to express my gratitude for your words and honoring both Peter and the little lambs, uh, the not one, not two. And I also want to honor Peter for his warmth and friendship toward me when I first moved there, extending the invitation to TA one of his classes at Smith. So we collaborated on that. And then I was like a perfect stranger in a way to the community. And he opened the door for that and just turned the class over to me. Thank you.
I, I would like to share that, Reverend Anraku, thank you very much um, for your sharing, for your Dharma talk. And what's stood out for me that when I was in Western Mass, I used to come at your Zen center, and I did not know Peter's contribution and Peter and his wife's contribution. So when I used to come, I was in transition. I was coming from another country, coming to Western Mass. And that place provided a lot of solace for me. So thank you for sharing Peter's story. Yeah.
I just also remember that we had fun, Peter, Margie, and us, with taking Tai Chi class downtown.
Thank you, Anraku, for your message, your contribution, your talk. I love the circularity of what you offered. It really challenges my own linear mind. And I'm sitting with the stories and digesting the messages and hoping the connections will become much more clear because like you said, I know that they're there. So thank you for your talk. I truly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
Um, yes, thank you for that talk. Um, I too have a person like Peter in my life. I believe he's still alive. Last I talked to him. Yeah, he was someone, his name's Scott. He was someone who was really deeply instrumental, I would say, in my life and had a direct, um, his input in my life led directly to me um, being here with you, meeting my partner, and having my son. Um, and what kind of comes up for me thinking about him and Peter, as you describe him, is that there's this we're all bodhisattvas, and there's bodhisattvas everywhere, and you never know how you are interacting with someone's life because, Scott didn't do these things necessarily consciously for me, but it was the openness of his heart and the giving of his heart that planted those seeds. And so we're all doing that for people, and we might not know it. Um, and yeah, with Palm Sunday, I just read a really interesting column in the New York Times this morning about someone describing about how the kind of the lost message of Palm Sunday is that it's a protest. The original Palm Sunday was a protest against the authoritarian rule of Rome and the administration of Herod. And it was actually a parody of the procession on the other side of Jerusalem that was the arrival of Pontius Pilate. And there was all this pomp and the Roman, the Romans did this thing when, they would be really bombastic about their stuff. And so this was like, he was riding on a war horse and Jesus was riding in on a donkey. And it was all the working class people and the poor. And so I think that's an important message to remember today that, we're still doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for bringing that piece in. Yeah.
May I share again?
Yes, you may.
Okay, hold on a second. I have to read something to. So, speaking of Palm Sunday, um, I went to church this morning in the big church in town. There's a little famous chapel by the sea, but this is the big church. And I set my alarm with enough time, but I was so tired because I couldn't sleep last night. And I thought, well, I don't really need to do this. But I go to church still because I honor my matriarchal lineage on both sides. And my mother wanted my sister and I to be raised Catholic, even though I was raised with a side of the family that practiced something else. But as I turned to just stay there, the word "levántate y anda" came in my head. And in Spanish, that technically is supposed to be the words that Jesus told Lazarus when he healed him. Get up and walk. So I got up, and in 17 minutes from laying flat in bed to be sitting in the pew, that's a world record. So that's the backstory. So it said it was 11:30 mass. So I get there, and there's like half a dozen people in this church. And I got there, I looked at my phone, it was 11:34. So I thought, I'm late. Nothing was happening. So, but no one was leaving. So I just sat there. 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes passed. And then I hear the sounds. And this whole promenade of people are coming in. but the majority of them, like 50 something, were little children. You know. What I did notice that the adults who were seated in the church and the ones who were coming in, guiding all these little kids, some of them were like 2, 3 year olds. They all were carrying flowers and herbs and fronds. You know, I remember from a child, we would get palms at the church, and then we'd go home. My grandma would make them into crosses. So as everybody was filing in, this young man comes and he sits on the other side of me, and he's holding this sort of a bouquet of herbs. And then he turns to me, he pulls one out, turns to me, and gives me one. So this is in his honor. We didn't talk, but that he would do that, you know. And something I had not seen in the masses I go in the little chapel is that in this one, this priest did say, "Peace be with you," and share a sign of peace. And people shook hands, you know, and so forth. Then I glanced across the aisle, and there's this little elder woman, very tiny, and she reaches her hand across the aisle. She's on a cane. I have to step out of the pew to go to her. She just not only took my hand, she pulled me in and she gave me a kiss in his cheek, you know. And it was amazing. I was going to text Anraku and say, this is the most fun I've ever had at a mass in my entire life. Because as the priest was talking and the whole singing was going on, the main gospel was the Gospel of St. Luke, and I think they read the whole gospel because we were standing like for 25 minutes. It was incredible. But all the little children started doing their thing. They were chatting and they were playing around, and one little boy was climbing up, and I was marveling. Not one adult said, shh, you know. So I praise the children today on this Palm Sunday, you know, sun-faced Buddhas.
That's great. Thank you. So, I don't remember. I think we go till 1/4 after, right? Yeah. So we're on the overtime, but if anyone feels that they want to just put a word or something into the space, we could just breathe for a moment and see. If not, that's okay too.
I just want to say that I am going to church now.
So next week we'll be not here. We'll be eating food and celebrating Easter. That's what I'll be doing. I'm not sure what you'll be doing, Ruman, but maybe something similar.
I'm going to go back because it was so much fun. You know, I don't understand, you know, everything's in Portuguese, but I know the whole thing from my own, you know. Yeah, I'll be going to church, and I'm going to Holy Thursday, and I'm going on Good Friday, you know. Yes.
Cool.
Just an announcement that next Saturday, I believe, is the community work at Two Streams.
Oh, right. Thank you for remembering that. So if you feel like flying in, or you're welcome. You always have a place to stay. If you're just down the street, look forward to seeing you. And and otherwise we'll be in this space again in 2 weeks, same time. Yeah. Anyway, have a blessed week and take good care. Till next time. I'll chant really briefly the 4 vows. Sentient beings are numberless, vowing to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, vowing to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, vowing to enter them. Buddha's way is inconceivable, vowing to be it. Take good care. Hope to see you again.
Stay safe, everyone. Ciao. Ciao.
Okay, I think it's just us. It's just us. Okay.
That was great, honey. I'm so glad you're recording everything.
Oh, right.
Did you
I
turn?
forgot to turn it off. Let me turn it off. Stop recording.